let's transition now. Let's move into Manny and Maddie's 40s. Now, a lot happens in this decade as well, but maybe not the same quantity of stuff that happened in the 30s, but there's some big stuff that happens for this family in the 40s, and it kind of doesn't start off with a bang. It starts off with a uh-oh.
Yeah, we wanted to throw some curveballs at it, so we actually set up that one of them actually had a big job loss at age 40. I have shared with you guys, it's in Millionaire Mission, my book, when it comes out. I witnessed my father in his early to mid 40s actually lose his job, not from any fault of his own. In this day and time, it's not uncommon for big corporations just to walk away from entire business units or to downsize the workforce. So you need to be prepared. This is another reason that the financial order of operations is all terrain. So we did build that into this scenario.
And then so obviously he loses his job and then he's able to regain employment, but when he regains employment, he's not making the same income. We assume that when he finally does find another job, it's actually at a 10% lower pay than he was making before he left his job. So there's some ground they have to cover. There's also, in their 40s, they recognize, hey, our kids are getting older, and we've been saving diligently, but we also, college is something we need to start getting realistic about, something we need to start thinking about. So they start having the conversations, how do we save for college? Do we start thinking about a 529 plan? Do we start utilizing that type of savings vehicle? Or do we start looking at a taxable brokerage account? Do we focus on putting our oxygen mask on first to make sure that we are on solid financial footing before we start saving for the kids?
There is a cool milestone that happens in their 40s, around age 43. They buy their first car with cash.
No, it's huge.
They didn't even use 23.8. They actually went straight into paying cash for it. That's something to be celebrated.
Yep. And then as they get to the end of their 40s, as they start rounding it out, one of their children goes off to college and they decide, okay, how do we go about paying for this? What are the ways that we ought to think about paying for college? How should we approach this? And you know that one of the rules that we always throw out there is when it comes to getting student loans, when it comes time for you to decide how much student loan for your kid to take on, they should not have student loans that exceed their first year's salary. So if they plan on getting a job that starts out at $50,000 a year, they probably don't want to have student loans that are in excess of $50,000 a year so that they can make sure they start their financial life on the right foot.
So let's actually look at the pots of money. What actually happened? What did this journey look like? 40s hurt. The beginning of the 40s decade really hurt because that job loss sent them reeling. You'll notice very quickly the only things that kept working was Maddie's employer match, and then they were funding the emergency reserves. That's all they had going on. They had to take a break. Right, there was no Roth. There was no HSAs. There was definitely no college funding. There was no taxable savings. They were focusing on just the basics of getting that employer match as well as building up some emergency funds.
But what's so great is that's the reason the emergency fund was there. In their 40th year, they actually had to pull on the emergency fund to bridge the gap. But when he got back to employment, when they turned back into a dual income household, their number one priority was to build back the emergency fund. And they were able to do that at age 41, and then they got back to savings. They both got back to contributing to their 401ks. They were doing the HSA. They were doing the Roth. They were beginning to save, and so well, by the time they got to 42, they actually got to move to step 8, saving for prepaid future expenses, which for them was thinking about college for their kids.
Yeah, and then 44, putting some away for the next car replacement. That was exciting so they could pay cash. Because remember, we are in this decade now where we're no longer financing. They're paying cash for all future vehicles. That's pretty exciting stuff. And then let's not forget, at the end, this is when kids are actually hitting the college track. So it's kind of an interesting time of life in that, too.
So let's think about it. As we move into the 40s, what were some big key takeaways that they had? What were some things that we noticed? Number one, they put their oxygen mask on first. They made sure that they were taking care of their financial life before they were trying to help with their kids. But what's beautiful is because they did that, they were in a position where they were still able to save for college. They were still able to help with college, even though their students had to take on some level of student loan debt to make up the difference.
I like that in this decade we celebrated that they were able to pay cash for cars.
Huge.
That's something that's not everybody can say they do. They also kept their lifestyle at bay with inflation, and then moving the goalposts and all the other things that can happen.
I mean,
they were very disciplined.
How often do you see people in their 40s? They get so excited. They're, oh, you know what? I'm 20 years now. I need to go buy the beach house. I need to go buy the vacation. I need to go buy the sports car. I need to go fill in the blank. They did not fall prey to this. Manny and Maddie don't care about the Joneses. They care about what their financial life looks like and the decisions they're making that is best for where they want to be in the future, not best for what the rest of the world sees around them.
Well, and I'll close out this decade. The muscle memory is strong at this point. What used to be a really struggle, like maybe some of the emergencies and other things, are now just little hiccups.
That's right.
Because they've really matured in their solid financial footing. And you can actually see that if you look at the chart. Yes, they started once again on step 4 of the financial order of operations as they entered their 40s, but they came out on the other side of step 8. Yeah, they didn't get to pay off their low interest mortgage. That would have been a nice celebration, because we know post 45 you do have the ability now, if you want to pay off your low interest debt, but they just weren't there with the kids going to college, with his job loss in his early 40s. But still really commendable how well they managed this decade.